Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, Umber Rays, and today we're going to be talking about the JP Tower, JP Tower number 2, and I'm going to talk about my experience with the tower climbing the regular floors from floor 1 to floor 30. I'm not going to talk about the EX stages because I haven't recorded them yet as I drift out of frame, and I just haven't had time to actually do my videos recording the actual attempts at EX stages. I've been mostly doing a lot of the tower on my Twitch stream, so Twitch streamers will know that it has been a very interesting experience up the floors, but for everything that I think is generally good for the tower, I'm also going to make some recommendations for changes to the future, because there was a absolutely glaring experience with this time, which was the fact that, well, okay, before we get into my biggest complaint, let's talk about my experience in general by 10 by 10 floors. So going up to the first 10th floor, literally I thought that almost nothing here was challenging. It was pretty easy, there really wasn't much opposition, and by the end of it, done out of it super quick, super easy. Continuing from 10th floor all the way up to the 20th is where things started to get a little more serious. There was more challenge in here. There was the necessary to use abilities to kind of preserve a lot of my character's HP as I was going up, and about this time it's when kind of the limitations of my characters started to be felt a little bit more, in the fact that just couldn't one-shot a lot of these weaker enemies. And yeah, so getting up to floor 20 though was not a problem. It was pretty darn solid to just get through it, get it done, and move on. Now, as we got into the 21st to the 30th floor, this is when things started to get very specific in very specific ways. So talking about some of the more challenging floors, going up, really 21, 22, and 23 was not that difficult overall. My characters were strong enough and generally powerful enough that I really didn't encounter much resistance. Even 24, which had a little bit of annoyingness with the tankiness of the turtles, was difficult, but it was, or should I say, it wasn't difficult. It was challenging, but it was clearly doable. Floor 25 was when I started to notice a very specific pattern that was starting to come up, where enemies' damage that they would accept was becoming incredibly specific. And what do I mean by incredibly specific? Well, the types of attacks that were good against certain enemies was starting to show that they were just pumping up resistances. Now, getting through, while this floor was kind of a little bit annoying because the Lamias could cast Charm and status effects were starting to become a thing, the grenades, self-destruct and everything, which was triggered on some of my characters, was manageable, at least for the level of characters that I had. Most of my characters being level 99, some of them being anywhere from job level 12 to job level 15. Continuing on, 26 was actually fairly easy because I was super heavy loaded on ice characters. While this floor was particularly nasty because of the amount of archers and AoE characters that could come in, the fact that I just had so many ice characters made this floor almost a little too easy. It was just boom, done, moving on kind of thing. Floor 27, getting into the Thunder stage, this was actually a little tense for a while just because my Agrius got paralyzed super early and was just getting nailed on multiple sides by damage dealers, but was able to get through it generally well by the use of Ketone, even though my Ketone was not super well developed. Continuing on, floor 28. This was the floor that actually made me really angry, because pretty much everything on this floor is incredibly high damage dealing, is fairly fast moving, fairly threatening, and Severo and Miranda really are the pinnacle of that. Severo, whose flare was able to do a total of 6,000 damage to my characters, was incredibly frightening to fight against. And while you were able to use Charm at 40% success rate, a lot of the times just didn't work quite as well as it potentially should have, and then once Severo or the birds who could be charmed were on my team, they really didn't do that much damage. This was the floor where I had to just throw a ton of my characters at it to slowly whittle down the enemies and make progress to the point where I could really get an advantage. Also using a refresh too. And the primary reason that this floor was so difficult was because I had no Thunder Mage, and unfortunately, while Frederica does have an elemental advantage, she did not have a weapon type advantage, meaning that Frederica was pretty not so good. As a matter of fact, the all-star of this floor for me was Ayaka, who... It's that storm, man. Ayaka's non-elemental magic, such as Meteor and Comet, were able to do a really solid amount of damage, but not an incredible amount of damage. Seeing that most of the enemies were starting to get around 6,000 HP, it was a really difficult floor. Thalia, Saria, whatever you want to call her, for whatever version you're playing, she was kind of a quintessential unit for this floor, as well as a thunder-based elemental tank, Orlando, and the brand new character Scar. But this floor was incredibly like a solid brick wall to try to get through. It was get throughable, but this floor I felt was a big roadblock and could be a massive roadblock for globalers in the future who do not build a Thunder Elemental Mage. Not joking on that. Or some time mages, basically, because that Comet Meteor is just way too important here. Floor 29 was actually fairly easy and incredibly doable for the most part, except for the fact that Agrius died because, of course, it's a nice base tank and there's just a lot of fire damage here. But the amount of water elemental units here made this not only totally doable, but actually completely manageable. And the final 30th floor against not the Blood Moon, Siren, as well as a couple of 4 fire elementals and some human-based characters, including 2 healers, was a slow, arduous process, but was, again, completely l'indigestion. Was completely doable with a little bit of refreshing and usage of multiple characters, whittling down the fire elementals, and then taking care of the healers, and then finally, very last, taking out Siren herself, who had approximately 19k HP. But either way, getting through this floor, all 30 floors, was completely doable, but was very roadblocky compared to what I remember from previous tower. This tower saw a lot of resistance just being stacked on enemies, and only allowing specific types of damage to really be effective on very key specific floors. Again, for floor 30 as well as 28, it was basically Thunder Magic was the only thing that had a really good advantage against multiple characters, with the only exception being the elementals, which were water piercing based. So Glassy and Scar basically were the best 2 characters to have here. As for floor 29, it was basically water characters, specifically Glassy again. Floor 29, floor 27, misspoke. Earth elemental characters, particularly being, from what I remember, Slash, and potentially, right, that one was for you commenters. I want to call her just Cry now. Just Cry, man. Just Cry, man. Anyway, continuing on. Continuing down, this was the Ice Elemental floor. This was the Status Effect floor. This was definitely Lucia, as well as this was any Fire Elemental to just have a little bit of fun, including Delita and Rain. But yeah, overall, the thing that was most noticeable was the fact that floors had very specific damage types, and this was an incredibly frustrating moment to deal with this brand new version of the tower. Sorry we had to get through all of the backstory, but it kind of gets me to my ultimate point. Just the fact, and yes, I did take 9 minutes to get to my point. Thank you for noticing and mentioning it in the comments so kindly. It's okay, I have a comment scrubber that gets rid of a lot of the riffraff. Anyway, long story short, this has been kind of a general negative experience from my perspective with Tower, just because it was so limiting and incredibly punishing, even for me who has a fair number of characters. Not to flex or anything, but I do have a good number of characters developed in multiple different elements, and I thought that I would be, pretty solid on this tower, but as it turns out, underestimating the thunder element, one specific element and one specific damage type made this tower much more difficult, which brings me, of course, to my suggestion, because I don't really want to harp on this content. Overall, while the tower may be frustrating and may, just make me really angry at some point, that is good for me in a way, because it kind of just, pumps you up. It feels like Dark Souls, where it's just like, oh, this really difficult content makes me angry, but I want to get through it. It is kind of motivational in a certain extent. What I would love to see with Tower is to have options for floors, because while I understand that there is probably a design team that is specifically making this, I do think having options for players as they go up is kind of really, really important to make your game just feel better. Overall, just going up the floors, it would be nice if you had, even on just key floors such as floor 30, floor 25, the boss floors basically, every 5 floors is kind of just a boss floor where the enemies are just a little bit tougher. It would be nice to have some options for what you are fighting, just for players who don't necessarily have every single element in every single type developed. Again, having that kind of option, being able to pick and choose where you go to be able to complete a tower, would be a really interesting thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are able to complete, multiple floor 26s. If, dummy, you are worried about us getting just too many rewards, then just don't let us, kind of thing. Still make us have to do the reset. It also adds more value to resets in general for people who are not aware. Once you complete the normal version of all the tower floors, you can reset, go again with just basically trying to get event or tower currency. It's generally pretty good, but again, you are just doing the exact same thing again, kind of just hoping for better performance. Honestly, I think it would be much better if we had those multiple floors, because it adds replay ability. I mean, forget the fact that it would be nice if towers just kind of stuck around permanently, because they are really good PvE challenge content. I think it would just be awesome to just have, again, that winding, winding path where you can choose room A, room B, room C, or if you want to take notes from other games, which you can do if you, start on floor B and you only have very specific chances to switch over to room B or room C to make it again more challenging and kind of direct players into wanting to get different elemental characters. That also is good. I think that's also potentially fine. But having multiple routes where you can kind of plan your way up the tower seems like a awesome idea that would add a ton of replay value, because once you reset the tower, hey, let's try a different path. Let's see if I make different choices, if I have a better outcome overall. Again, I really don't think you need to change the reward structure at all, because the reward structure feels fine to me. The EX difficulty, even the fact that it is separate and optional, and the rewards are nice, but they're not like make or break the game. I feel like you have a really good chance to do this kind of upgrade where you have multiple winding paths, multiple options for players who don't necessarily have. But let me tell you something, your whales, your dolphins, we want to challenge all of our characters. We want to challenge our team building. So give us more options. I cannot stress how good of an idea I actually think this is. Is it more programming work? I guess, but you guys kind of just dial up the numbers anyway. Not to shit on the developers or anything like that, but I do feel like that you're just amping up this content, just kind of build similar floors, just change the elements around, change maybe the damage resistances, and really give us a much more optional, more winding path. Like, I've seen this before in things like Slay the Spire. I've seen this in like other games like that where you have to choose your path, and the options you choose could even really change how things end up for you. You could even have a much more engaging tower where instead of just floor, 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 you can have floors that have HP regeneration or skill regeneration, or gives you a damage boost, or potentially debuffs too. Can you imagine how cool it would be to have that kind of a tower mode? Again, like, you see this in other games. These ideas are ripe and ready for the picking. Take what works in other games and add it to this, because really, my general feelings, even though, you know, I may get angry, I hate this tower. Tower is so bad. It's not bad. It's really good challenge PvE content, and that is something that this game needs more of. Less PvP, more PvE content. But to summarize my feelings, give us multiple routes. Make the routes whatever you want. Make them specific routes. Make them potentially limited. Make them give us some options, and let us pick our route and kind of plan ahead for what characters we do have. We do want to beat all the content. That is what is really fun about a strategy game, putting yourself in difficult positions and having to get through with, you know, what you have. And last but not least, it also adds more replayability factors just by the fact that we get to try different routes and everything like that. And add some flair to this. Add bonus rooms. Add rooms where we can go in and potentially get, you know, damage boosts, damage nerfs and everything like that for one attempt. And then players kind of have to figure out how to work around that and everything. The tower content has a ton of potential, and I really hope that Gummy takes a look at this video and uses these suggestions to improve the tower. Tower is difficult, but I wouldn't have it any other way, given the way a lot of the other content is in this game, of being grindy, of being ranky, of being all of that stuff. Tower is great. Make it greater. Let's do it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you like the suggestions. If you have any suggestions, throw them in the comments below. And tell me what you think of my plan as well. Do you think that this has merit? I think it does. I think it's super exciting. And let's try and get Gummy noticing this so that they will improve the game. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Well, improve the mode. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take care. See you next time.